In today's video, as you can see, we're getting to a little bit of a different start than we typically take a look at. We're taking a look at our satellite imagery here, actually, and we're going to dive into these upcoming storms because yesterday I talked about how many storms there is across the Pacific. Today, we're going to be deep diving into that. There is a potential southern slider snowstorm on the way that could bring a major snowstorm to the southeast or the northeast or even mid-Atlantic. It could become a bit of a nor'easter. There's a lot of question marks at this point, and we're going to be diving into that as we're going to have a colder period of time between about the 7th, 8th, all the way through about the 15th of January here. So we need to talk about all of these things. As we're taking a look at our satellite imagery, we can see that there is currently a storm over the kind of Great Lakes regions of the United States. We can see our cold front here off the East Coast. So here's 1, 2, potentially 3, 4, maybe even 5 there. That L was a little weird, but there is just so many storms here. Potentially 1, 2, 3, 4 still to come, and then a 5th is over the central regions of the United States. It's mostly this one, though, that we're taking a look at. A lot of this storminess has the potential to eventually dive down and become that potential southern slider as we see colder air reach into the United States. So we have a massive storm. And actually, I'm hearing this morning that the hurricane hunters are actually heading into this storm, which usually that is a pretty rare occurrence for non-tropical systems or, storms like this. So we're going to get better model guidance from that coming up soon. So tomorrow's video is going to be very interesting, and the day after that, because we will have that guidance that they get from sending the airplane into it, which, if you didn't know, helps get better information on the current status of the storm and the current different phenomena happening in the storm. And they send that data into the models, and that helps the models get a better base, of information based on what's currently occurring. And that obviously helps to predict what's going to occur, getting a good foundation of what is currently happening with the storm. And that usually is helped significantly with these hurricane hunters. We can see this significant amount of just moisture heading northward all the way into northern Canada here and portions of Alaska from this storm. We can see this storm is stretching across the western regions of North America. It's a very, very major storm at this point. Now, what we're going to do is go ahead and turn that off and try to turn everything back on here that we normally take a look at. So we will just do that. Might have to turn this off real quickly. There we go. Perfect. Now we are back where we normally are, more familiar territory. We can see that storm, the low right here, getting picked up here. We can also see plenty of precipitation for the western United States already starting up here. So we will take a look at that right now, actually. So we can see that there is more showery activity right now currently over the northwest, but right offshore here, we can see more persistent precipitation about to move onshore to Washington and Oregon as this low approaches the coast. As we take a look at the southwest here, we can see more persistent precipitation down here. Rainfall for these more coastal and lower elevation areas. We can see plenty of snowfall here along the Sierra Nevadas as well from this. Definitely a significant weather event happening there out west with that very strong low. We can see this low here for the central United States, kind of the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. It's more of the eastern United States. But we can see that there is snowfall on the western end of things here, diving down. And we see some rainfall making its way up through Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan with this one, mostly in the form of lighter showers, though, with this storm. We also see some lighter to moderate snow showers taking place here over Maine. And as we work our way further south, we can see that most of the precipitation with this cold front is offshore. Except as you work your way down to Florida, we can see some thunderstorms moving along this cold front here for Tampa, the Orlando and Lakeland area there. Kind of that I-4 corridor here in Florida, we see plenty of thunderstorms. And they've actually moved through and south of that region now as we're making this video. So this will continue to work its way south across the state here until it basically is out of the state through the south there, moving towards more of the Caribbean. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move on. We're going to take this information and we're just going to move on to the model guidance, and we're going to compare a few things. It's going to get interesting over there as well. We're going to go away from the script a little bit, move away from our typical stuff, and we're going to be doing some comparison, side-by-side comparison of the models and talk about what we think is going to happen with this potential major snowstorm. Now, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to work our way through the European model here and then the GFS model, and then we're going to compare both of those models to both of their ensemble members, or both of their ensemble models, which are related but different. Okay, so your European model here is just one model, right? So we get a very not averaged outlook, very long range. You see, we can go all the way to the end of the model run here on the 14th of January, and it still looks realistic, but probably not what's going to happen, but it looks realistic. If you go to the end of an ensemble model, you have 30 different members. So we've talked about this time and time again, but it just ends up averaging out where if you were to go on for forever with an ensemble model, it would end up eventually reaching just average across the board because all of those members spread in different directions over time, and as they start to disagree, every single member being slightly different from the other, you eventually get something very average out looking, but not with your deterministic model here. You get the same result here as you do on hour 1. Accuracy varies, but you're going to get the same type of look, if that makes sense. So let's work our way through this. We can see this major storm system kind of lingers near the coast all the way into Saturday morning we're taking a look at here. We see some showers moving across the southern regions of the eastern United States. More snowfall still working its way inland here for Washington, Oregon, California now, also Canada up there. Now by Sunday, we see this low starting to finally move its way more onshore. So we're seeing rainfall and snowfall depending on location and temperature. Now there is a storm signal here from the 8th through the 9th, 10th time frame, but look, it moves through like a southern slider. We see it do just this, right? But there's just not enough cold air. We don't see any snowfall with this. There's still 100 hours to go. And if things did trend a little bit colder, I would not be surprised if there's a little bit more snowfall here on the northern end of things. But I also wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't occur. Also, there is the potential for this to possibly move more up the coast and become more of a nor'easter look. There's still time for that type of a change to happen, but I don't anticipate it at this point. All right, let's keep going with this, and we see our storm systems kind of churning here, one for the northwest, one up here for the plains, and then we have a bit of a storm system along the east, so very stormy look. This is by the 12th, and we're really watching for this one, which is our original storm system. It's done about this. At this point, we see snowfall here for Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska. This is very classic southern slider look, in my opinion. And what we're going to see is it's just going to gently slide off the coast and bring potential snowfall here for very far southern areas in the eastern United States. In this case, it dives very far south, right? So we see it dive abnormally far south for a snowstorm, bringing snowfall to coastal South Carolina, coastal southern North Carolina, and then also portions of Georgia, pretty far south into Georgia, to see snowfall. Now, this is very interesting. We are going to take this with a grain of salt, as this is extreme as far as unusual snowfall, but certainly nothing can be ruled out. And again, I do see the potential for this to possibly ride the coast a little bit more, but according to this particular model, we do see it slide off the coast a little bit more gently, and it doesn't bring any precipitation onshore to the east. Although I will say from the 13th through the 15th, the east coast here up and down will be cold enough for snowfall. So if this storm did ride the coast a little bit more, it would bring a major snowstorm, like almost regardless. Now the interesting thing here is, again, it's just so far south. Now, this is something that I wanted to kind of really focus on in this video, is usually you would see a solution like this, something that seems abnormally far south, from the GFS model. The GFS model is known for having what we call a southeast bias, which means in the long range, that particular model tends to show things a little bit too far southeast. And when you see it do that, you know it's probably going to trend northward, maybe even significantly far northward, as we get a little bit closer to the storm. Now, the European model is a little bit less known for doing that. But yet we see this very far southeast solution on the European model, and that kind of begs the question, is this going to trend northward and bring snowfall to more realistic places? Or is this going to not have a northern trend and be this very unusual and rare snowstorm? Well, that's a good question. Let's take a look at the GFS model, because that was our European model. Let's take a look at the GFS model. We do see a little bit more from this ninth system, okay? It plays a little bit more into that if it's colder scenario, and does bring snowfall to DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia, maybe even some snow showers up there for New York City. Very, very interesting solution here. Probably minimal amounts of snowfall accumulating, but still it is snowfall, and that's not something we could really say, for most of this winter so far. Now, as we take a look, we see a storm moves through around the 10th. That's a little bit early. That's not really the same storm that we're taking a look at. And actually, this one is your storm system that is that same one we just saw in the European model. As we continue this on, what's interesting here is we get less cold air on the GFS model, and this low is inland. We see the low. This is the exact hour where the European model would have it here. So again, the circled one is your European model. But actually, we have this low over South Carolina here on the GFS model. This is the GFS. The Euro would have it about here. That's a pretty big difference. That's hundreds of miles. And again, usually this model is the one you expect to see way too far southeast, and the European model is the one you expect to be a little bit more spot on with that location. But now we're seeing them crisscrossed, which makes my confidence go basically rock bottom in any sort of a solution right now, because we see this disagreement in a very unusual way. If we saw a disagreement like the GFS model being too far southeast, but the European model has it further north, I'd be like, okay, the GFS is probably going to move into where the European model is currently showing it, but now it's kind of up in the air with the European model having that far southeast solution. Now, like I said, we're going to be doing a lot of comparison today. I want to just move forward with this model, though. You see, we never really get a snowstorm from it, really. It just stays inland there. We get a lot of rainfall, not a whole lot of snowfall for anybody, and then it kind of moves up the coast. We do see a couple of scenarios here, like this one. If there's a little bit more cold air, this would have some potential. That's near the 20th. We will take that with a grain of salt, obviously. We get more cold air in the long range here, according to this European model, or better yet, this GFS model, with a low here over near the Great Lakes, and this brings some interior eastern United States snowfall. But again, grain of salt here, guys. We do see a massive trough, though, in the eastern United States, just moving in right around the 20th, according to this model, and a ridge building out west. So certainly something interesting to note here that we're going to be continuing to take a look at. Now, comparing the storms, this is all going to be at 0Z Saturday, which is going to be about 8 p.m. on Friday, actually, Eastern time. Now, we take a look here. Again, I'm going to draw in. The GFS model is, I'll make it a little bit littler than that. The GFS model is the yellow one. Let's go on to the European model. The European model here is the red L. So we see the difference here. This is all the same hour. This is the European model. Here's the GFS model. European model, GFS model. Now, we've talked about ensemble support before. It's important to see that the ensemble models in the long range agree with your deterministic model. Oftentimes, the ensemble models do a lot better than these deterministic models. So let's see where your GFS, or what we call the GEFS, so the GFS ensemble model is at as far as what it thinks at the same hour. And as you can see, the GFS's ensemble model also has the low pressure system right where the European model shows it. So we have almost no ensemble support for the GFS model, but the GFS ensemble model almost supports the European model solution. If not, it's a little bit further north than what we see from the European model. We can see maybe some snowfall further north. So I actually think this is a little bit more of a realistic scenario here, but the low is in a very similar position to what that European model was showing. Now, that might also beg the question, where is the European ensemble model showing it? Well, as we take a look, we can't get the precipitation type here from this model, but it also supports this red low pressure system. It's right where that same one is. So both the GEFS, the GFS ensemble model, and the European ensemble model support the European model. Again, this solution here, they do not support this GFS solution. There is no ensemble support for that. Here's the GFS model. Here's the GFS ensemble model. You can really see the difference here. But again, as we switch back and forth between these, the GEFS is a little bit further north there, as you can see with the low, but it is much closer to being what the European model is showing. And then the European ensemble model also being a little bit further north here than your European model, but definitely supports that type of a coastal solution, not this inland solution. We don't see that from either of these ensemble models. So I think that's really important to note, and I think that's going to help us moving forward, just understanding where we're at right now. The GFS model is a little bit on its own. It's out on an island, and we've seen those types of solutions be right sometimes, but it is much rarer, And usually the one with that ensemble support is going to end up being the winner. And the European model is definitely closer to that winning side, I would say. Now, let's move on with the temperature pattern. We see warmth, warmth, warmth. Some cold starts to move in. Finally, spotty cooler air. And I'll switch this to yellow in a second. It's hard to see the red. But we see colder air kind of spotty around here for a lot of the southern and eastern United States by the time we're reaching the 8th. So that's when we start to cool down. Sunday, we have some cooler air, but we see for the most part it's going to be above normal. And that's why I think we don't get that much snowfall on our European model for that snowstorm moving in, or potential snowstorm moving in right around that 9th time frame. We don't have enough cold air here from the European models at this point, but it's still 100 hours out. We could see that change. Now, that's our 6Z model run. Let's keep going with our 0Z model run. And we see more and more colder air. This is by the 13th, and this is right around when that snowstorm would be trying to move along the coast here. And you can see we have plenty of cold up and down the coast. Below normal temperatures, certainly going to support that potential snowfall. And things only get colder here for the southeast as we approach the 16th, 15th. And then once we get to the 15th to 20th time frame, this is what we get. We get this negative PNA building back in. So we see this here, and this forces the warm air around it. We've talked about this for months now, and this creates this warmer pattern in the east right here. So to reiterate here, right from the 8th through about the 15th is going to be your opportunity for cold and snowfall. That's about a 7-day period of cold and potential snow. But from the 15th through the 20th, that chance greatly diminishes here, according to our European ensemble model. So we better hope that we get some snowfall or something to occur between the 8th and 15th, because the opportunities seem to go down after that point, at least for the next 5 days after that or so. Anyway, I hope this video didn't get too analytical here. I know we dived into some very interesting things and educational things, but I hope it was not boring. We're going to upload every single day like we always do, so be sure to subscribe for those daily videos that do come out. Hit the bell icon for daily notifications so you never miss an upload. Like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.